I call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. And if you're able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Johnson.
Here.
Kelly.
Here.
Mikulski.
Here.
Polika. Here. Leaks May.
Here. And now approval of the agenda.
Madam Mayor, I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Johnson.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Mikulski.
Yes.
Polika.
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes. All right, so we have a presentation tonight, a couple of them. Our first one being with our city manager regarding the Headley override millage reset.
Thank you, everyone. I'd like to take the opportunity tonight to respond to some common questions that we've heard about the Headley override millage proposal for the May 6th election, as well as just get out the facts about that particular millage proposal. A little quick background on the millage proposal. This is the planning process behind how the proposal came to be. Certainly, there were activities which led to first the November proposal, and since then additional activities related to public input sessions, feedback, and direct engagement with residents regarding what they wanted to see different in this millage proposal. Ultimately, what funneled most into what designed first the November and now the May revised proposal is related to two citizen-led committees. That's on the Finance Review and City Facilities, which we'll talk about a little bit more. The Resident-Led Facilities Report in 2022 and the Finance Review Committee report in 2024, like I said, really form the basis of identifying needs within the city's operations. The City Facilities Report looked holistically at all of the assets currently owned by the city, as well as need for future facilities. Whereas the Finance Review Committee was exclusively dedicated to evaluating the impacts of the Headley override millage that is set to expire at the end of this calendar year, particularly on staffing, service levels, and facility needs. Obviously, the recommendation from that report was to consider a full charter reset, which is what was denied by voters in November of 24. So what are we actually considering now? Well, first we need to understand what happened in November. There were two different components of the millage request that were on that ballot. The first, the charter amendment, did pass. That amendment sought to add language to the city's charter to dedicate specific amounts to police, fire, and parks. For those that aren't aware, the city's charter really dictates how the city operates, what its functions will be, and what obligations it has to its residents. That did not create a new millage in and of itself. That's very important to understand. What it did do is add that language permanently to the city's charter. At this point, however, the millage rate has not been fully reset, so it is not in effect. That language exists, but the corresponding component, which would have been the full millage reset, was not passed. That sought to reset the full charter rate of 20 mils, which would have been a net increase at the time of about 4.3 mils. That did also look at funding new facilities and making the reset permanent. Of course, we heard from residents that that is not what they wanted. Instead, what we're looking at with the May election is a pretty dramatically different millage proposal. And I understand that the naming convention is very similar, and so that has created its own consternation with residents who are confused by that. But that exists simply because that is what this is. We are overriding the existing Headley rollbacks that the city has experienced. So whether it's the Headley rollback of November or May, that's just a title. The difference is in the actual language, which in the May election is a dramatically lower request. So we're asking instead for voters to consider resetting the millage rate that was already approved in 2015. So continuing that trend, pressing the reset button. We're also letting voters know that this is exclusively for essential funding purposes. So there's no new construction. There's no planned increases to staffing levels as a part of this millage request. It is primarily for police, fire, and public works operations. There is also a set expiration date of 10 years. It is not a permanent reset. And all of this is driven by the feedback that the city received ahead of November, as well as since that time, as it crafted a response to residents that is more measurable and more directly impactful to the city's operations. Why do we frame it as a reset? Because really that's what we're asking people to do. Push the reset button on 2015. This is an example. If I showed you every single rollback we have, this every single year would be filled. It'd be a little crowded. So we just showed some sample points along the way. But consistently, the city is subject to a Headley rollback, which is when the taxable value of a community grows faster than the lesser of inflation, or 5%. We've all experienced the world economy in the last several years, and obviously that has had its impact on the city's millage rate. To the point where 5.4452 mills was reduced down to 4.2808 in 2024. By adopting this upcoming millage proposal, we start that clock over again. 2015's rate goes into effect 2026, and the city continues to be subject to Headley overrides as our taxable value increases. Importantly, where will the dollars be spent if this is adopted? Very simply, on essential staff and facilities maintenance. That's the core components of what we're trying to accomplish here. Essential staff, we have to call out the fact that staffing makes up the majority of the city's general fund budget by a large percentage. That's not unusual in the least bit. Every community, that is a very true statement to be made. The city itself has 144 full-time positions. That's not to say those are all full at any given time. We have several vacancies right now, for example. But the voted override millage does support approximately 34 jobs if we use the data that was previously shared in that budget cut scenario workshop. Of that, 26 are in police, fire, and DPW. The reason that such a predominant portion is within those departments is because that makes up 78% of all of our general labor costs. Police, fire, and public works are 78% of all labor costs. There is simply no way to avoid impacting those departments if the city were to lose $4 to $4.5 million a year. Why do we spend so much on labor? Because that is our service. That is the product we provide. When you contact us for an emergency, there is a physical person who responds. All of the services that the city provides that are touched by this operating millage are directly related to people providing that service. And at the end of the day, those staff are really essential to maintaining those service levels. So that is why we talk about the fact that if staffing levels are cut, that directly impacts the service level within the community. The second side of the equation is facilities maintenance. Again, circling back to that city facilities report and also talking about our 6-year capital improvement plan, the city tries to set out realistic goals for what it needs to do to maintain its facilities. Obviously, the facilities report also looked at adding buildings in the future. That is all on hold. There's no direct plan for that effort into the future at this time. Really, what we are trying to accomplish is taking care of what we do own, making sure that we are being good stewards of the buildings and the resources that we have in the community. But at this time, because of the uncertainty related to the election and how that millage would impact our budget, a lot of key tasks are being deferred. And deferred maintenance is a very troubling game, in my opinion, to play, because it often leads to higher costs later. Here's an example of a slide that we shared during our budget workshop. You'll note in blue is just the portion that's related to the general fund. So parking lots and sanitations have their own fund. That's not what we're referencing, and those millage dollars would not be used for those purposes. Just within the general fund, for public works, our fire stations, our city hall and police department, our outdoor parks, We have in fiscal year 26 alone about $1.5 million in gap financing that we don't have in our fund and work that can't be done. That's really the gap that the facilities maintenance portion of the voted millage is essential to fill. What do I mean by essential? Well, let's talk about some of the conditions that exist right now. This is an example in Fire Station 1. We've had to convert a restroom to a shower stall. It is the only shower available for men in our Fire Station 1. And I don't know if you know much about fire service, but they do have to shower within a very specific amount of time following a fire event. This creates issues. This to me is a staff health, safety, and wellness issue. Similarly, this is what, sleeping conditions look like in Fire Station 2, trying to fit beds wherever we can because we don't have adequate room. We have beds next to HVAC equipment and within the workout room. Even simple things like windows, single pane windows that still exist, broken windows, improperly insulated windows that may be original to the building, have not been able to replace. DPW building, which you saw from the previous slide, had the biggest funding gap in terms of its needs, is in similar or worse conditions in some cases. Very outdated systems, electrical, HVAC that are difficult to maintain or keep operational. Windows, again, that are broken, single pane, not insulated, in need of replacement. And then water infiltration, a persistent problem, and general facilities within the building that are just inadequate. So how does this break down? About 72% of the cost or what we would expect to generate from millage revenue would go to maintaining those essential staffing levels, while 28% would go towards facilities maintenance into the future. The idea being that as we catch up on facilities maintenance, that becomes preventative maintenance. And we understand that we have to do our part too. It's not just about continuing to increase revenue. The city needs to be a leaner government. We owe that to residents. We have an obligation to constantly be considering ways that we can improve our operations and be more efficient in what we do. To that end, the city has identified on the staffing side about $5.5 to almost $600,000 in cost savings into the future. This comes from reducing staff counts either permanently or on an interim basis until revenues otherwise catch up, as well as incredible efforts to reduce overtime. I want to give a shout out to the fire chief, who's done an excellent job, particularly in this category, through new policy changes within the fire department to curb overtime while still meeting the needs of the department. And then other positions within the organization are frozen. We're waiting to see how the millage plays out, and those may be positions that go unfilled. They are predominantly within police, fire, and public works. Again, we don't want to bring on new staff just to let them go, and we know that those are the departments that will be hardest hit. On the operations side, we've identified about 167 to 350,000 in cost reductions. I understand that's a big range, but it's a fluctuating target given some of the revenue opportunities we've identified. On the expenditure side, we did narrow down our focus on IT help desk. We identified several software uses that we will not be proceeding with into the future. That's reflected in the FY26 budget. Reducing our dependence on contracts or third-party services. If it's not essential, we're not doing it in 26. Same thing, limiting replacements to only those that are essential needs within the organization. And then shout out to our Human Resources Department, who this year made a change to the way that we process our payments for healthcare to make it in more real time rather than letting the health insurance company hold our reserves. That has helped more with cash flow management and kept our costs consistent and lower than they were in previous years. It doesn't change the overall cost of health insurance to the city. It just means we're holding that cash instead of a health insurance agency who really doesn't need to be collecting our interest as well. On the revenue side, our Community Development Department has identified a way to maximize the offsetting revenues from CDBG funding. And then I'm working with our Finance Department on reevaluating our interest earning opportunities. As well, the Finance Department had previously updated its accounting of how reimbursements occur to the general fund that hadn't been done in several years. So really, it's an all hands on deck. Everyone is looking at opportunities within the organization, and all of these micro changes do add up to be quite substantial over time. What is the actual impact to residents, of course? I understand that's what people want to know the most. Well, first, to understand the broader picture of the city's taxable value and millage rate. Here is an example of the city's millage rate. These are all of the millages associated with general city operations. Obviously, you know, residents are also subject to school millages, county millages. This is just what is used here in the city and what we calculate in terms of the city operating millages overall. As you can see, year to year, there are significant decreases. That's the bottom line of that chart. The annual change due to Headley impacts every single one of those millages. In 2026, if this millage were adopted, that green highlighted box is what we would project the millage rate to be. It does reflect a 0.8736 increase compared to 2025, but you'll note it barely gets the city back to where it was 2.5 years ago. It's not even a full reset to 2015. We could dream of those numbers, they're gone. This is as realistic as we can make this proposal. And the estimate is even that 5.4452 may very well be subject to its own Headley override the very first year it's put into effect. If that's the case, you're talking about another 0.1 mils being reduced. And that's why we say there off to the side, this is about a difference of 0.7647 to 0.8736 mils. We can talk a little bit more about what that means in a future slide. But this is where it puts Ferndale overall compared to our neighbors, squarely in the middle. Not too high, not too low, just what we need to do to accomplish the work that we have set out for us. And it's important to understand, too, that a mill isn't the same from one community to the next. Really, the reason that millage rates are so dramatically different from one community to another has a lot to do with the taxable value of their community. So in Ferndale, for example, we can generate about $952 million off of 1 mil. We would need 4 times that to do what Royal Oak does with 1 mil. That's why sometimes communities with lower tax bases have higher millage rates. They simply need those dollars. They need the higher millage rate to be able to do the basic services. And communities that have a higher capacity to generate because they have a larger tax base need lower. Makes sense. There's kind of a minimum cost of doing business when you run a city. How does this impact homeowners? This is the chart that residents will see on our website if they are looking for information about the Headley override millage. This does use the more conservative number of about a 1.1644 increase. And I know that has been a confusing point for residents. We want to be as honest and as transparent as possible. On paper, the simplest way to put this is technically 1.1644 mils higher than the first reset rate in 2015. However, as we shared in that previous slide, the net impact is actually much lower, somewhere between 7.8 and 0.89 mils.
Through the chair, could you explain just briefly why we can't tell people today exactly why that number isn't solid?
Absolutely, because that number is going to be based on our taxable value overall, and whether or not we are subject to a Headley override millage, and whether or not that taxable value increases above either the rate of inflation or 5%, whichever is lesser. We don't know what the taxable value will be because those rates aren't set until they've gone through the full board of review process, they get adopted and equalized, and we get that information back. We do have preliminary data on 25 from the county, but I think it would be important of us to just wait and see what the actual numbers are.
Okay, and when does that usually happen? Usually happens after we actually approve the budget.
Yeah, Phil, do you have what date do we expect that?
It's typically right around late April, early May, but it is after we usually approve the budget. So usually when that happens, and it happens almost every year, because it depends on when the county votes on and accepts those taxable values. And so we won't know for sure until after our budget is approved.
Thank you. And that's why we're giving people
Yes,
a range.
and that's why we're giving people a range, and that's why in all of our written information, we've used the more conservative number of 1.164. And that's why even here, showing this chart, we use the more conservative number. I'd rather be more conservative on the impact and have a positive, lower outcome than promise to residents that it's going to be 0.7 mil increase and not have that come to fruition. Even still at 1.1-ish mils, the impact is about $5 to $15 a month to residents. And that's from a taxable value range of $60,000 to $150,000. And I really want to highlight that point. So $60,000 to $150,000 in taxable value covers 90% of residential properties within the city of Ferndale. So that means 90% of residents, this is going to be a true statement, that this will be about $5 to $15 a month in total impact of what you feel from one year to the next, or about 2%, just shy of 2% of your actual tax bill. One final piece of financial information I'd like to highlight is the fact that the city is consistently doing more with less. I understand public perception about government is not entirely favorable. There are certain branches of government who are not doing us a lot of favors right now in that regard. But if you look at the dollars that the city received in its tax millage in 2008 compared to today, it's actually $3 million less in spending power. $3 million less just gone in our capacity to do the work that we do, while still providing services at the same level, or in some case adding new services since that time. I would say that the city has been very mindful of how it's using its budget if it's been able to maintain its service level and still feel that real dollar loss since that time. Where can people learn more? We have Ferndale Learns coming up. Our finance department will be doing one on April 24th that will have a specific section dedicated to Headley and talk a lot more about things like millage rates, taxable value, your own individual tax bill. We also have a dedicated web page answering frequently asked questions. We try to add questions as we hear them or receive them from residents. We have several social media educational videos that we've put out. We obviously have the print postcard and newsletter, and then obviously residents can vote on May 6th. But most importantly, I want to highlight to close, we have an email address. And I and myself and the assistant city manager are personally responding to every email that we receive at this email address. So if residents have any questions whatsoever about this millage proposal, about where the dollars go, about city operations, please email us. Thank you.
With that presentation, does council have any questions of clarity or any information that they need based on what was presented to us just now?
Thank you for putting together something, Colleen.
I think that it explains things in detail and that it's understandable for the residents to kind of understand what we're asking and why we're asking. Anything else from anyone?
Through the chair, the only comment I would have is I particularly loved the slide that showed the 3 million less in spending power. And gee, wouldn't it be nice if we had some of that state statutory revenue sharing that we've got now? Wouldn't that make up a nice difference?
Sure would.
Yeah.
Our next presentation is the 2024 Planning Commission Annual Report. Oh, okay.
Evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Just try to pull it up from the website quickly. All right, as the mayor said, this is the 2024 Planning Commission Annual Report. Chair Foster couldn't be here today, so I'm going to give it on her behalf. I'm going to walk through just an overview of the background and purpose of the annual report, what we do with the master plan review, Planning Commission processes, and some approved development projects with some updates. So why do we do an annual report? A couple reasons. The Michigan Planning Enabling Act requires the Planning Commission to compile a report of all operations and the status of planning activities. As part of being Ready Redevelopment certified, we are also required by the MEDC to compile an annual report. And then it's just good to keep track of things. We use this pretty frequently when we're looking at the past for our 2023 reports or 22 reports on what we did, because sometimes we forget all the projects we are involved with. So the Ferndale Planning Commission, it's a commission dedicated to ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of Ferndale through the process of reviewing site plans, special land uses, plan unit developments, and rezonings. It's also tasked with drafting and reviewing the master land use plan and amending the zoning ordinance. We usually meet every third Wednesday of the month at 6:30. This month May might be a little different. We have 8 commissioners and 1 city council liaison, so Councilor Pollica is our liaison. And members of the public are always welcome to attend and give feedback to the Planning Commission. So if you recall, I think in September 2022, the city council approved our latest master plan, which is an entire rewrite done by Smith Group. Just pointing out a couple of the goals in there and what the status is. Under people, we had a goal for arts and culture, which was to tap alternative funding sources for art, which may include other city tax or revenue streams, foundation grants, historical societies and commissions, and other means. We're working on that. There's a couple things that have been done. For the built environment, we're prioritizing physical accessibility and ADA standards during street construction. So I know DPW is working on that. Consider crafting and adopting a specific sustainability checklist or scorecard to quantify how well certain actions or projects meet sustainability goals. I know the Zero Waste Coordinator is working on that. Create promotional materials for residents and businesses describing the various sustainable practices that can be deployed in the city. Working on that. And assure the zoning ordinance standards align with current technology to support climate action goals. So that is in progress. So what does the Planning Commission actually review? First, we allow applicants a discussion item. So if they would like to come talk with the Planning Commission about a proposal, they can come set that up and just have an open discussion on the merits of a particular case, what's good, what the community might be looking for. The Planning Commission does give final approval for site plan reviews when it's not administrative, so I'll talk about that in a second. But if you've seen before, it's a little confusing that Planning Commission reviewed like a site plan and a rezoning, but the City Council only saw the rezoning. It's because the site plan ends at Planning Commission. They approve it if they so wish. But what does come to you is special land uses, so think gas stations, think event centers sometimes, things that might be appropriate in a zone district but need some kind of review. And then rezonings come to City Council, and plan unit developments, PUDs. We don't do a lot of PUDs, but we've done a couple over the years. The Planning Commission also has the ability to waive certain zoning requirements, so they can waive parking spaces and reduce that. They're pretty conservative on it. Landscaping requirements, we have a lot of existing buildings that are hard to meet, say screening landscaping requirements, parking lot landscaping requirements, so they can provide some waiver there or take cash in lieu for trees being installed. In some building material deviations, they have the ability to waive or adjust. In the new zoning code we adopted, there is more flexibility to do administrative review at the staff level, which saves Planning Commission a hearing. So that's been helpful. Projects that do not require Planning Commission or City Council approval, small-scale businesses reoccupying vacant storefronts, they would just come in. They might need a site plan administratively, but they would get a certificate of occupancy when they're ready to occupy the building. Residential construction, only single-family duplexes and ADUs. Fences, sheds, and garages, minor site plan amendments. So if they come back when they're engineering something or actually building and they need to adjust something, there's some flexibility there. And modifications due to ADA accessibility. That's always a plus, so we'll do that administratively. The Planning Commission approves projects that align with the master plan, follow the zoning ordinance, and are harmonious with the surrounding uses. And it's important to note, sometimes projects that receive approval are not constructed. So we all know about those projects that cause a little consternation in the community. People get a little upset, and then in the end, it can't get financed, or the purchase fell through, and it really never gets built. So we'll run through a couple projects that were approved in 2024. 1120 East 9 Mile. It's a mixed-use development right near the former Comerica Bank. It has a bunch of conical evergreen trees in front of it. It was approved for 19 upper-level residential units with 15,000 square feet of ground floor retail. It does include bicycle parking and front parking area. And at this point, they are searching for a purchaser of the lot. So I don't have any update other than I think the numbers, given the current interest rate environment and the construction costs, don't make a 19-unit residential development pencil as well as they would like. Another one recently approved was 3101 Bermuda. So when you're taking Bermuda north near the existing self-storage unit on the west-hand side, it's a long vacant parcel. This proposal was for 487 interior units, 19 of which are accessible. I do know that they're still working on it. I don't have any update, but right now it's being worked on. Financially, the financial modeling. 22305 Woodward Commercial. This building looks a little familiar. There's been a lot of news lately, but Ghost Burgers is going in there. They own Second Best and the Ghost Place down in Midtown, Grey Ghost, down in Midtown. So I think the community is really excited about this. They've just submitted sign permits and they will be opening soon. 2000 West 8 Mile, this will be the biggest development we've done in a while. This is the Detroit Axle expansion. They actually were approved for 2 phases, so they were thinking about coming in for a portion of it and phasing it and then making the second phase later. We've recently fielded calls from them that they would like to just build it all as of last week. So I don't know if the tariffs have something to do with that and they want to bring things in-house and just go for it. But it is 318,000 square feet. And an installation of the sidewalk, if you know, along 8 Mile does not connect from Pinecrest portion west. So that'll be all the sidewalk there. More news to come on that. 651 Livernois is a multi-unit building, 26 residential units. This is the former, if you remember, FLAX construction building that was torn down. I know the neighbors have some concern because there's currently a hole in the ground, so we're working with them to at least get it filled until construction starts. I do believe this is moving forward. Last I heard was, 2 more months until they can get everything lined up. So this one does look like it is moving forward. 2243 Woodward, just down the street here. It's conversion of an existing 15,000 square foot vacant commercial building to a medical office building. The people that are doing this also own the medical building on 10 Mile. So if you know, east of Woodward, when you come out the bridge, there's that medical building next to, I think, a church.
Used to be a church.
Used to be a church. Is they're doing this piece. And that was generally the projects at Planning Commission for 2024. As you recall, last year, December 16th, you approved the new zoning rewrite, which was enormous to do, a huge lift. It took us over 18 months to get it where it needed to be, but it was a complete overhaul of the city zoning code. It included the allowance for accessory dwelling units, options for housing density, updated landscaping requirements, additional mention for environmental and sustainability options like battery packs and solar arrays, et cetera. It does allow some more parking flexibility. It updated the EV charging requirements. And overall, it's just easier to read and understand and graphically pleasing. So we're happy with that. As I mentioned, almost every time I came here is after we adopt the zoning code, we will find mistakes. We will find something that when we go to apply, it didn't make sense why it was written that way. We'll find a spelling error somewhere in the document. We'll find something that we should just adjust because it's best practices. So we are about 3 months out of the zoning code being adopted, and 4 months, Councilor Polika mentions, but we already have a list of items. So I think we'll be taking a recommendation to Planning Commission on May 14th potentially, and then it'll be coming to City Council. I do envision this will encompass a lot of amendments, and then I imagine the next one might be a little more distance in time, but it'll probably take 3 or 4 amendments as we read things differently, apply them in real time to properties to allow flexibility. Goals for 2025, we want to monitor the implementation of the new zoning ordinance. We would like to adopt Planning Commission bylaws, part of RRC, which we've talked about for a couple years now. We have had a great meeting with mobile vending operators, so food truck operators. Planning Commission invited all of them, the operators, at our last Planning Commission meeting, and had a really great survey to go through and discussion items and understanding how their operations work better. We would like to hold a joint meeting with the FESC. We're going to continue to chip away at the planned Ferndale action items in the master plan. We're going to review education and communication procedures internally and with the community. We are looking at exploring solutions for Woodward vacancies. This says South Woodward, but just Woodward vacancies in general. So we are working with the DDA, talking about some things related to Woodward and 9 Mile. And then continue to ensure that new Ferndale developments are aligned with the master plan and the zoning code, harmonious with the surrounding area. And so that'll be our goals for 2025. That is the PC annual report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I mean, anything you want to add as the liaison?
Questions or comments? No, not really.
Okay, all right. You work hard, that's what you, all right, it's open to council.
They
if you have
work
any
hard.
questions.
That commission works very, very hard.
Well, you too, you as well. Open it up for council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. So we're now at the portion of our agenda where it's called audience. I invite any audience member to come up to the podium to state your name and address and speak regarding anything on or off the agenda. You have 3 minutes to do so, and I open it up now at 7:39.
Good evening, Council. My name is Julie Music. I run the Ferndale Pride. And our organization's address is 300 East 9 Mile, which is right here. I want to tell you a little bit about Pride. I know later on you guys are going to be voting on Pride, and I want to remind you that the reason we asked for patio zone to be closed is because 2/3 of the event does sit outside of the patio zone. We are the only Pride of our size that we know of in the entire country that is able to put on a Pride festival without selling alcohol to the public. We leave that all to our bars and restaurants so that they can have the best sales day of the year. We are a harm reduction-based Pride, and we were also able to get 1,200 cans of Thirst Mutilator, which is a non-alcohol product made by Shorts Brewing Company, donated to help raise money for us and for Fern Care. So we really take the alcohol-free day seriously. We really hope that people celebrate in our bars and restaurants if they want to partake in alcohol. And we just want to remind you that we did have to reject 64 applications this year. We only had that time period open to apply for vendors for 10 days. So we definitely have a demand to make the event bigger. The suggestion has been to cross Woodward. However, that would cause a huge strain on our staff. So we're hoping that we can continue in this footprint. And even if we crossed Woodward, we know that we'd still be outside of the patio zone to accommodate the size of event that we could grow to eventually if we are able to grow staff. Okay, 1 minute 25, I'm picking what I want to say next. We did release our 2 stages today. We are super excited to let you know that Batty Brooks is going to be headlining our performance stage. On our dance stage, we have DJ Remarkable as our headliner, and then we are excited to bring the godmother of house music herself, Stacey Hot Wax Hale, to Ferndale to play a set. So we have 3 headliners that we released today, along with our entire lineup, and you can see that on our social media so far. In addition to that, we have a lot of events coming up, and my events were on my phone, but I want to remind you to check our website at ferndalepride.com/events because there's all sorts of things coming up. Cougar Hunt is this Friday. Join us at the 2:15, dance the night away, vote for a cougar. This year, the Hot Daddy brought in nearly $5,000. We're really thankful for the people stepping up in our community to help put this event on this year. There were lots of people who sponsored individually too. We'll talk about them on the main stage. And then the other thing I wanted to share with you is that we do have new merch coming out. Some kids over at Arts Academy of the Woods needed an assignment for school, and I was happy to step up and give them one. So I do have my VIP stickers printed, and they are here. I would love to share them with you today. They are a rainbow butterfly. There'll be also 6 other styles on sale at Pride, along with a different style of t-shirt and sweatshirt.
Hi, Dennis August and 1550 Spencer. And I was watching the news last week, and one of Wayne County's commissioners, I believe that was what he was, that brought up a really good point. How many people have passed away because that railroad train, such as the one that caused me to be late coming to this meeting tonight, okay, have passed away on the emergency vehicles, you know, and I mean, I rode them twice last year, okay, didn't really want to, but, you know, the old body says, you know, when it's time to get in there and, you know, find some professional help, you got to go. I had it twice last year, and that just a little over a year ago. But I have seen 2 fire trucks, one emergency vehicle, one of those emergency vehicles, and an ambulance get stopped, and they had to shut everything off because they're on the other side of the tracks. Okay, and that is the reason why I bring this up, but I probably wouldn't have even said anything except for I was watching the news when this one guy from Wayne County, he wanted to know how many people have actually passed away in an ambulance because they couldn't get through because the railroad was blocking the intersection. My advice is, what I think they should do, the people should do, including all of yous, you know, you're just people who are out there in the public at times. Maybe we should start suing the railroad for loss of life. You know, do something to kick the butt, you know, kick those people in the butt to make them realize that they can disconnect those trains and make a passageway like 9 Mile and Hilton. They could make it 9 Mile. Why? Because that's where you go up. You can go up to Beaumont, or, you know, I mean, but we got to do something to make these railroads think, you know, and that I'm pretty fortunate. I'm here today to talk to you guys. I had 2 rides on that emergency vehicle, the EMS, you know. I was there twice, you know. Stroke, and then I fell about 2 weeks after I got out of the hospital, and they couldn't get me, my wife couldn't get me up off the floor. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, Ferndale's over at my house pulling me up off the floor and then back into the hospital again. And that, you know, but I mean, we got to do something. We got to expedite, make the railroads kick it in the butt a little bit, and make them realize that, hey, look, if you got the lights on, if the emergency vehicles have got their lights on, separate that train. long before any of yous were there, including you, Pollock. You're the longest one. But I was in the city council meeting, and my neighbor down the street had just retired from the railroad. And he left the railroad people here just going like this, you know, because they were lying their ass off. And he told the railroad, you can disconnect those trains. They don't require a whole lot of work, you know? And the railroad people were saying, no, you can't do that. And he was like, yes, you can. He said, I worked 35 years for the railroad. I wish that guy was here today, but he's passed on. But you know, the railroad can do something. And maybe, and just maybe, we could all just, you know, step it up a little bit and maybe just start going to sue these people. You know, I had an opportunity, you know, I had 2 times last year, and I'm glad that I am here to talk to you people. Okay? Set it in a coffin 6 feet under. Okay? And I'm sure every one of you are just like that. Every one of you. You know, you don't want none of your family members to pass away because, why? Because they couldn't get through because the railroads got things blocked off. We need to step it up. We the people. You understand that? You ever heard that before? We the people? Okay?
All right, thank you.
All of us should step it up.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Still call the audience is open. Anything on or off the agenda?
Jason Storms, 2017 Almont Street. I'm just here to speak in support of the ballot override, the Headley override coming up next month. First off, as the son and grandson of union workers, I'm very loath to see us have to cut union workers, especially ones that keep our city functioning as well as it does. And the gentleman over here was just talking about emergency vehicles not being able to cross the train tracks. And if we cut people, I think we're going to see this get even worse. If we have to lower the amount of staff we have at our various emergency precincts, firehouses and such. So I just hope people will treat this as a math problem. I think the city social media videos has done very well at this, but this is not a political problem. This is not any kind of gamesmanship that council is playing, that the city is playing. This is a simple math problem driven by the fact that we have, as a city, to balance the budget every year. So, thank you.
Hello, Council and Madam Mayor. My name is Christopher Hall, and I'm at 1845 Syme Street. This is probably going to be over 3 minutes, something that I wrote to stay focused because it needs to be said. I wanted to take a moment to address the recent report that City Manager Colleen O'Toole presented today. It is incredibly disappointing and honestly disheartening to see the conditions that our Ferndale police officers, firefighters, and DPW staff are expected to work in every day. These individuals who proudly serve our city, regardless of anyone's position on the Headley override, these public servants deserve basic respect and safe and humane working conditions. No employee should have to sleep next to a loud HVAC system. No one should have their sleeping quarters separated by a black curtain surrounded by lockers. No one should be expected to shower in facilities that look like they haven't been updated in decades. We talk about safety a lot, but how safe is a workplace with broken windows, exposed wires, and crumbling infrastructure? Honestly, I've seen better conditions at a highway rest stop on I-94, even at some of our nightclubs. And while frustrations run high and opinions different, one thing needs to be made absolutely clear. No member of City Council and no mayor, regardless of position, vote, or public policy stance, should ever be harassed or threatened. We can hold each other accountable, we can debate, and we can disagree, but intimidation and personal attacks have no place in our community that calls itself inclusive and respectful. Some community members have raised concerns about financial mismanagement. I understand that. but it's important to recognize that many of these complaints are rooted in decisions and circumstances from years to almost decades ago. No city, no state, no country, and frankly, no individual is perfect. Most of us have financial mistakes at some point, whether it's overdrawing a bank account, blowing a budget, taking on too much student loan debt, or spending a little too much on a night out. That's life. But sitting behind a computer or a smartphone, sadly, yes, even an Android, and using these issues to tear down people who are working hard for this community does not reflect the inclusive values this city claims to stand for. Let's talk about perspective. The estimated cost of this Headley breaks down about $8 to $15 per month for residents. Let's be honest, many of us spend that without a second thought in one trip to a local restaurant. And I live in reality of facts, so before I got here, I looked up a lot of stuff. Anita's Kitchen, chicken shawarma entree, $15.50. Apple Music subscription, $10.99. A Big Mac meal, $11.33. Equal Exchange organic coffee at Weston Market, $9.99, and that's on sale. Bell's Oberon 6-pack, $8.99. We're talking about price of a lunch, a streaming service, a coffee habit, or a beer run. The cost is real, but so are the benefits of investing in safety, dignity, and functionality of the people who protect and serve our city. And lastly, this is a big one. Whoever thought it was appropriate to weaponize our county's BSA database to look up residents' addresses and send threatening letters with a fake return address from CVS on 9 Mile, let's be very clear. You are a coward. Personally, I'm not scared of you. I got that letter. I am not the moon. You cannot faze me. Then let's be real, with the cost of a stamp, paper, and an envelope, you're already spending over $8 just to try to intimidate someone. A book of stamps is $12.60 these days. Seems a little pretty expensive way to show your fear instead of facts. We are better than this. We are Ferndale. Let's focus on the real issues, and let's support the people who support us.
Thank you.
I don't think I can follow that. Jim McLaughlin, 903 Emerald Street. I didn't prepare anything, so I'm just going to cheat and say that how Jason framed it as a math problem, that's really what we're facing. You can come up with excuses and complaints about how this and that may have gone wrong in the past, but bottom line, we're talking about straight up numbers, and realistically, yeah, $5 to $15 a month. That's a cheesy gordita crunch, which is ridiculous. We should all write letters to Taco Bell because they raise the price and it's ridiculous. And as well as, the way Chris really framed everything, yeah, I just want to say that it's a no-brainer for me. I moved to Ferndale because I love this city. I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. It would make absolutely no sense for anybody to just decide, hey, we should really defund the city and take away, services that everybody relies on. So I hope people do the right thing, do the smart thing, and vote yes for the Headley override as well as the schools on May 6th. Thank you.
All right. With that being said, I close call to audience at 7:55, and we are going on to our public hearing. Item 6A, which is the fiscal year 26-28 triennial budget, first reading.
Madam Mayor, I move that we open the public hearing. There's a request that we move in.
Okay, all right.
I move that we open the public hearing on the FY 26 to 28 triennial budget, first reading.
I think it shows you.
Oh, sorry, at 7:56 PM.
Got it. Okay.
Support.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Mikulski,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes?
Leaks May.
Yes.
That's me.
It's really the proper process.
Yes.
Before the presentation?
Okay. Well, then we open it up. Anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this topic?
Hello, my name is Quinn Ziegler, 705 West Camborne Street, and as you'll recall, last year I served as the chair of the resident-led Finance Review Committee. Now, the committee's purpose, as we heard today, was to make a recommendation around Headley, but we didn't stop there. As you consider the budget tonight, I'd like to highlight another recommendation that we included in the final report. We recommended that the city reduce existing spending to reduce dependence on a Headley override. We recommended regular reviews of city spending, comparing proposed expenditures to regional benchmarks or industry standards. Reviews should be ongoing and incorporated into both the annual budget process, like tonight, and applied to new expenditures. In areas where Ferndale spending is higher than these baselines, spending should receive additional scrutiny. Now, the goal isn't to cut just for the sake of cutting. It's to increase efficiency while maintaining or improving service levels. We also emphasize that this work should reflect the community's values and be as transparent as possible. At a minimum, we recommended an annual report to residents on the number of opportunities explored, the number implemented, savings achieved, and the impact, if any, on service levels. The goal of this recommendation really is twofold: ensuring our purchasing, processes, and delivery channels are in line with regional benchmarks and best practices, and most importantly, building community trust in the financial governance of the city in a clear and accessible report. I applaud the efficiencies Ferndale has already implemented in the last year or so. Changes to the fire department vehicle fleet with a one-time savings of around $2 million, the switch to a Medicare Advantage plan for retirees, maintaining benefits while saving around $800,000 annually, consolidating election day voting precincts due to increased participation in absentee and early voting, which reduced personnel costs by almost $7,000 per election. And as we learned tonight, almost $1 million saved by reducing expenses and maximizing interest-bearing income opportunities. And all of this on a budget that's $3 million less than we had in 2008 in inflation-adjusted dollars. As a resident who has spent a lot of time looking at Ferndale's finances in the last year, I encourage you, keep going. Let's trim the things that no longer make sense or serve the community. I ask that we ensure that the budget we have is spent wisely and that the city communicate clearly to residents what improvements and changes we can expect to see here in Ferndale. Thank you.
Still leave it open for anyone who'd like to comment. And with that being said, we will go on to the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate everyone bearing with us as we make changes to our agenda. I know you've seen some new cover letters with this agenda packet and some changes to the way that we are approaching formalizing our motions. Certainly if council wants to make decisions that are different in the future, we can do that. Right now, we're just trying to get us to the best practice standards and make sure that where feasible, we're following Robert's rules. So you'll also see later in the agenda, so it doesn't confuse anyone, on the Ferndale Pride motion, you have an option, and it's bolded in the suggested action which one you take. For the budget, though, I greatly appreciate the intro to the topic because really that's the theme of the FY26 budget, is identifying where we can create cost savings. And a lot of that comes from micro changes within each department to identify what makes sense to continue to do, where we can save money, either generate new revenue or cut expenses. I would encourage anyone who hasn't already to dive into the budget workshop. It is a lengthy meeting, but there's very good detailed line item information in there about changes that have been made. In terms of what is different from this conversation to that budget workshop, we have updated all of the fiscal year-end 25 projections to more accurately reflect current year trends, as well as anticipated major projects and expenses through the fiscal year-end, both on the revenue and expenditure side for major capital projects, as well as anything we've received grants for or expect to receive grants for. We've also, on the revenue side, revised the projections based on the preliminary taxable value numbers. So the expected Headley rollback for this fiscal year. It was a nominal change, but it did change multiple property tax revenue line items within the budgets. We also continue to reevaluate, so from the budget workshop to now, additional small changes related to largely contract services and software line items that are now projected not to occur in FY26. We did respond to comments about the DDA budget to reflect that those activities would not fully reduce their fund balance reserves into future years. And then I had an opportunity to speak with Councilmember Johnson earlier today and identify some other funds where we need to make those updates. So I do expect that change for the second reading. But at this time, I would greatly appreciate any comments or questions you all have on the budget, as I do hope to continue making any final changes through our second reading.
All right. Open it up to council for any questions regarding the first reading, the draft of the budget.
Madam Mayor, I'll kick us off with one overarching question. It's something that Colleen and I we talked about a little bit earlier today, but just for the benefit of this body and for the, listening public, one thing that this budget does, currently it is forecasting no revenue from a voted millage. It is forecasting an assumption that will be no Headley override, because right now, legally, we're in a position where our override is going to expire if it doesn't pass. And so preparing the budget, we're currently preparing for the sort of a draft budget with the worst case scenario. Can you talk about what that means and the need to keep that to still show a balance and what that's going to look like for residents who view a budget that looks like that?
Yes. So the future years, the city adopts a one-year budget, but it really approves a three-year budget that has budget projections in year 2 and 3. In year 2 and 3, which in this case would be fiscal year end 27 and fiscal year end 28, because we do not have the guarantee of that voted override millage, the worst case scenario presentation is continuing to operate as we do, but without that property tax revenue. As you can see, for the general fund, this results in an over $6 million deficit in year 2 and a $4 million deficit, roughly speaking, in year 3. Obviously, that is not sustainable. There would have to be substantial cuts to the expenditure side. So what I had spoken with Councilmember Johnson about is perhaps starting to show those figures in the projected budget. I don't want to be overly alarming to the community or to council or certainly to staff, but if we want to show a balanced budget in those years, it would be showing substantial line item decreases, particularly to wages in different departments.
And so I bring that up because I think it's a decision I think we have to make as a body. So we have to adopt a budget prior to the vote. And so we have to choose to show our budget. And from my perspective, I am of the opinion, and it's a very firm opinion, that we really cannot adopt a budget, even with the forecast years unbalanced. I do believe that that's highly problematic. And so if we're going to move forward with an assumption of no voted millage revenue for the time being, I think we would have to show these reductions. I mean, this budget would have to balance in those years. It's going to balance in the year we're appropriating, to be very, very clear. Yes. Fiscal year 26 is the year that we are legally appropriating dollars. That will balance. PA2 is very clear, that has to balance. PA2 is a little vague about your forecast years, but good practice under PA2 is that you balance every part of your budget presentation. You wouldn't present a budget that shows a deficit at any point. And so, you know, I'm of the opinion we should show it balanced in the years. And yes, that would mean, as Colleen just said, it would mean showing the kinds of cuts we've been telling the public would happen in our budget document. But I think we would have to, on the flip side of the coin, assure the staff and the public that that's going to change, obviously. If the Headley vote succeeds, we would not be in that scenario. And in that scenario, I would probably move for us to amend the adopted budget to show amended forecast years that reflect a more realistic reality. But we're kind of in this weird place of having this critical vote at a time where we have, I don't think, well, yeah, 2015 was in May. But
Yeah, were you, I don't know if you guys were always doing 3-year budgets at that point either, but yeah.
2015?
No, we were. Yeah, because Mayor Coulter came on in 11, and it was soon after that because that's what they were working on at the county. And so I would say by 13, 14, we were working with, I know, actually, I know that we were doing it in 13, well, 14, because I came on, I was elected in 13. I was on council on 14. And so that first budget in 14 was a 3-year budget.
I'd be interested to know like what the council did in 2015, if they had to adopt the budget prior to it was a May vote in 2015 on the override. How did the budget look in 2015? I literally couldn't.
Charter, so.
Right. But, you know, did they adopt an unbalanced budget in the forecast or did they?
I don't remember.
I'll have to dig out the old budgets, like, if we can.
Through the chair, even if they did, Councilmember Johnson, I do support your sentiment that we should be balancing based on the assumption that those dollars won't be there, because currently, they're not there. A general question and a comment. I am struggling to figure out exactly where we made the cuts in the triennial budget draft, because we don't typically look at that version. We look at the presentation that comes to council during the budget workshop. And I'm wondering, is there a copy that we have that has maybe like the before and after?
Like a draft.
I don't know what I would call it, like a draft revision.
Yeah, well, for the budget workshop, we would have created sheets, downloads, reports from BSNA. So that would have what was presented at the budget workshop, and then this is what's different sense. As far as like one document that's going to have the budget workshop budget versus first reading budget, no, we don't have that, and I don't know that we have a way to merge the two reports.
Okay.
I mean, we can present the two budgets, and you can kind of do what I do every day and kind of set them side by side and go through them.
I mean,
There's not one
basically,
document that.
I think you get what I'm looking for. Like, I'm looking for specific line items that changed from the budget workshop to present day. And if I have to go through the two reports and just line item compare them, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
could
that's
definitely
really
get that.
would be where to start, is taking if you're particularly interested in the general fund, just taking the general fund sheet that was shared as part of the budget workshop and comparing it to side by side this. Now, the only difference is that probably has revenues as one whole report, whereas these are broken out by department. So you'll have to follow the department codes.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, you can go line item by line item that way. I suggest to search just the line items you find.
Through the chair, if it helps, and I think it will, I can actually also provide the spreadsheet that we prepared, the workshop budget, and then the spreadsheet that we use for the first reading.
That would be phenomenal.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. know how much I love a spreadsheet.
I know.
But to Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Mikulski's point, that's, over the last few weeks, that's kind of what I've been doing, is going through and being like, looking for variances. I've been looking for variances less from the workshop to now and more from the 25 amended to the 26 proposed, to kind of see, like, because that's where I think you're going to see, I have found some of the things where I'm like, what's that? Like, that's an interesting change. And I kind of set my own little threshold in my head of like, if it's a change of $10,000 or more, or, you know, in a smaller department, and if it's a change of some amount more, I'll circle it, I'll question mark it, and then that goes into my like written questions of like, what is this? You know, what's changing here? What's driving this? And sometimes it's things that are going down, and I want to know like, okay, well, we really reduced this budget. Did we net reduce overall our costs, or did we reduce that in order to bring something else more important up, or, you know, were we just reallocating resources? So
Right.
that's kind of what I've been doing. But now that you've brought it up, it's like I would be looking at curious about that too.
Yeah. And I mean, the reason that I'm bringing that up is because, again, we're trying to point out where our budget efficiencies are. And you started the conversation by talking about some of the software changes and how we're reducing some budget there. I don't know exactly where to look for software changes within the line item version of the budget. I know we talked about it in the budget workshop presentation, but I don't know if those numbers are still the numbers that I should look for.
Yes.
They are?
Yes, so the line item numbers don't change. You know, the GL code number that's still going to be the same. So that could be a good cheat sheet for you if you want to take the slides from the budget workshop,
Perfect.
the ones we called out, and look at them at this juncture.
Awesome, okay.
Through the chair. So doing a little research, going back to 2015, because my memory is not like it used to be in 2015. So then we used to do a biannual budget. And in 2015, we did vote for the renewal, but we were 1 year early. So when we approved the budget, we were able to include the following year because it was already included.
Right. Got it. So even if the vote had failed, there was still a year left to levy. There was a year of levy left.
Yes, because it was passed in 11. It should have been renewed in 16, but we renewed it a year early.
So aside from updating then to reflect projected revenue losses in years 2 and 3 of the 3-year budget, are there any other particular changes or comments, questions, concerns related to the fiscal year end 26 budget?
I still need some kind of, document that's going to walk me through the interfunds and the reimbursements. We have a number of general fund departments that are receiving, that are on, 962101. And so thinking about, when we're getting these general fund reimbursements or these interfund things, just sort of, I need kind of a document that walks me through like the sources and uses. So like,
It's in your schedule.
yeah, a schedule of the interfunds would be great. I believe they all tie out. I don't not believe that, Phil.
Double check.
But I'm just curious about it. And, the reason I'm curious about it, my underlying thing, and this is something that Colleen and I were talking about earlier today, is, just making sure that we are maximizing and continuing to poke and push at these resources that are available in some of these non-general fund sources. Are there functions, are there activities we're doing in the general fund that would legally be allowable under one of these other funds? And if so, that's pressure we can take off the general fund. And this is a game I play a lot at work, figuring out like, could this go to the construction code fund? It really is eligible and they've got plenty of resources. So I'm going to take it off the general fund and do that. So I kind of want to see the interfunds because then that helps me kind of walk myself into, okay, how much are we taking from these non-general fund sources? What's making the general fund whole? Are we making the general fund as whole as we could? Or is there something we could even move off of the general fund, and can that operation actually be directly placed into a non-general fund source? Instead of reimbursing the general fund, they're spending directly from, it becomes an operation, a non-general fund operation. So these are not things that have to get resolved to adopt this budget, but these are things that to make me feel more informed about exactly how the general fund is doing what it's doing and balancing the way it's balancing. That's going to be really helpful to me.
So just to kind of gain some clarity, so for example, the marijuana revenue, is that what you're referring to, something like that?
Actually, that is one of my noted items in my notes.
Okay.
Is the change
I
in
just
marijuana
wanted
revenues.
an example of clarity so that I can kind of visualize.
So an example, yeah, so sorry, I should have done that while I was rambling on. So a good example is going to be something like facilities maintenance, Department 265. Line item 101-265-962.101, that's general fund admin reimbursement. So, a reimbursement to the general fund is going to show as a negative expense. It's called a contra account. And so that contra account serves to draw down your expenditure total in the amount that the fund is going to be reimbursed from a non-general fund source. So looking at facilities maintenance, for example, $296,845 is going to be a general fund reimbursement. Now, this could come from a couple different non-general fund sources. If there's activities being done by the facilities maintenance division that touches things that are on those funds. And so what I'm asking for is to understand the breakdown of this $296,845 and what funds are providing that resource and for what are they providing that resource. Facilities maintenance is repairing, part of the building where we store all of our street maintenance equipment. We consider that our street maintenance operation. So repairs there would be eligible for road funding, a part of our street road allocation instead of the general fund. And so it's reimbursing the general fund for that service to that fund. And so that's just what I'm trying to kind of get a better sense of. Because when people talk about cuts, I think this is a really important point. When people talk about cuts and wanting us to be fiscally disciplined, sometimes the answer is not to literally cut the budget. Sometimes the answer, because what people are most concerned about really is the general fund, right? Like that's the biggest concern for everybody. And sometimes the answer is not to cut something to balance your budget, it's to find a better home for it, where the resources live and where it's more logically connected to a revenue source that's not the general fund revenues. And so it's one of the tools in the arsenal for finding relief, providing reductions to your general fund while not sacrificing services.
Perfect sense. All right. Any other questions regarding the first reading of this draft and any information that we can provide to our city manager regarding any changes? I will ask, the next draft reading is coming up for the April 28th meeting. And when is an appropriate time or frame of time that you would need that information in case something just pops in our head, maybe that we didn't think about?
Yes, I would say if you want to have any feedback to me no later than the 23rd, so Wednesday of next week, we can. I'm also trying to implement a more formal and structured agenda setting schedule. So for our purposes internally, we would like to have everything completed by Wednesday at noon for the committee to then review and then packets to go out before end of day on Thursday. So Wednesday by noon for any final comments. And no, next Wednesday. I mean, for you, this Wednesday then, if you're gonna delay.
Well, no, I was thinking on our monthly,
Oh, yes.
next Monday.
Yes, if you have an upcoming monthly meeting with me, that's the perfect timing.
Although, Madam Mayor, you did ask a really good question that I think is worth us discussing and that was about the marijuana revenues. And if we're looking at, marijuana revenues, which are booked into the Community and Economic Development Department, which is Department 728, they are down, we're estimating the marijuana license revenues downward. There is a reduction in that revenue, and we did kind of discuss this at the budget workshop, but I think it's worth us just pointing it out because some folks may notice it who are looking for these kinds of things, that we're noticing that retail stores are letting their medical licenses lapse and focusing only on retail. And so the revenue that we were getting from some of the retail venues, we essentially had two revenue streams from them because they were paying for two different licenses to operate, and now they're only paying for one. And so it's something that I think it's logical to have anticipated, and it's logical to see that happening. It's just I don't like that it's happening when I want more money.
All right, so I just want to make sure that I'm reading this right. We moved and seconded to open the public hearing at a specific time. And now we're going to move and second to close the public hearing at a specific time, correct? At least that's what I'm looking at here. And then also, we're going to move and second to acknowledge the first reading of the fiscal year ending 26-28 triennial budget and to move to a second reading at the April 28th, 2025 regular meeting. So 2 more motions is what I'm seeing, if I'm understanding correctly.
So we need to make a motion?
Well, I'm just there, I just want to second it. We'll share the notes. Share the information.
Yes, a motion.
Okay.
So I make a motion.
Oh, sorry. I was having a sidebar.
Yeah.
But we're waiting on your conversation. Forward. So, okay, so I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on the budget at 8:35.
Second.
Or 8:25.
Kelly,
Yes.
Mikulski,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes. And now the third motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that we acknowledge the first reading of the FY 26 through 28 triennial budget and move to a second reading at the April 28th, 2025 regular meeting.
Support.
And through the chair, the reading is really the receipt of that budget. So if there's any question as to whether there has to actually be a reading of the budget, council has received, it's been submitted to council for review.
So would you rather we have in here?
No, I just wanted,
Okay,
for purposes
okay.
of clarity,
All right.
in case there was any questions as to that issue.
Did we get a second?
I seconded.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Mikulski,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes. All right.
Technically, we're supposed to read the whole thing, but nobody does that out loud.
Well, through the chair, it's just historically, you got to understand, this is like number 12 for me. We've always had a short presentation about some of the major changes and then open it up for public comment. And then council has comment. And then we move to the next meeting. So this is like completely different. It's just, I'm just not used to this structure. So that's why I'm thrown off, just completely thrown off.
Change is hard.
What's new to me too, but you know what? I'm flexible, so live and learn. With that being said, moving on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda item 7A, approval of the March 22nd, 2025 and March 24, 2025 meeting minutes. 7B, approval of the payment to Enterprise Fleet for 7 lease-to-own vehicles for a not-to-exceed cost of $10,026.75. Approval of the resolution to observe and proclaim the week of April 13th, 2025 as National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. 7D, approval of the proclamation recognizing April 25th, 2025 as Arbor Day in the city of Ferndale. 7E, approval of work performance by DTE Energy from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. on weekdays to replace power poles in the Withington Alley. 7F, approval of payment to Macro Connect for upgraded network equipment at the cost of $20,693.99. 7G, authorization for Parks and Rec Director to sign contracts related to upcoming senior trips for a 12-month period. 7H, approval to award the 2025 spring tree planting supply for $15,000. 7I, approval of the resolution to reimbursement from Oakland County for West Nile virus program expenses. 7J, approval of a contract with Lawn Clippers Landscaping Incorporated to provide snow removal and lawn care services to qualifying seniors. 7K, approval to purchase a LifePak 35 cardiac monitor in the amount of $55,648. And 7L, approval of bills and payrolls submitted by the Finance Director and subject to review by the Council Finance Committee. Need a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Mikulski,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes. Before we move on to the regular agenda, I'd like to read and observe and acknowledge the resolution proclaiming that this week, April 13th, 2025, as National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. National Public Safety Telecommunications Week initially started in 1981 by Patricia Anderson of the Contra Costa Oakland County Sheriff's Office in California. In 1994, President Clinton signed Presidential Proclamation 6667, declaring the second week of April as National Public Safety's Telecommunications Week. This is an opportunity to celebrate and thank telecommunications personnel across the nation who serve our communities, citizens, and public safety personnel 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The Ferndale Police Department offers special thanks and appreciation to the department's dispatchers, Katama Hedgespeth, Kyle Wallowick, Laura Moore, Stephen Wasick, Jessica Worthen, Jeremy Shepard, Tara Gallagher, and Brendan Walker. Their hard work and dedication allows them to serve as a conduit between the public and our first responders, making Ferndale a safe and protected community. So thank you to our dispatchers and all the work they provide and put in to make us safe and to respond to probably the numerous calls that they get every day.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And now we're moving on to our regular agenda. Approval of the special event permit for the 15th Annual Ferndale Pride to be held on Saturday, May 31st, 2025. Where's your chair?
Good morning, or good evening, council. And while we celebrate, what year is this now? 15, the big 15. Special Events Committee, of course, supports the request the support and approval by council for a special event permit for Ferndale Pride, which is scheduled for Saturday, May 31st. And along with this, the applicant, the director of Ferndale Pride, is requesting the temporary suspension of the patio zone on Saturday, May 31st. And by doing so, if council approves the temporary suspension, that the Ferndale DDA will be responsible to communicate to the local downtown businesses of the suspension of those who do have a temporary or a patio zone license. Because this is a law that is guided by council and also by the state, it would be that appropriate that council needs to approve a suspension.
All right. With that being said, what we're really deciding here is whether or not to approve, or whether or not to approve or to approve the suspension of the Ferndale patio zone for the duration of the event. I guess I just need a little bit of clarity for was it 15 years you mentioned?
Yes.
And I know patio zones has not been in effect that long, but isn't this common practice that we've?
Well, this year was kind of like a correction of realizing that this would be appropriate for council to specifically suspend. While we can make a recommendation, it would really be that we ask council for that support.
So we've been doing it, but we want it officially on the books.
Yeah.
From council.
And we also need to be mindful that the patio zone ends at Planavon, but yet the event extends to Livernois. So there is that gap. And there's no possible way for the Ferndale Police Department nor the event itself to monitor to prevent patio zone cups to go outside of the area. We can't ask the event to take that responsibility because it's a liability. And we just don't have the manpower to do that when we have so many people already downtown.
So how do the other events do it?
This is the only one that's asks of a temporary suspension.
Right, but you said they don't have the capacity to manage it?
Mm-hmm. I would say that would be a question for the police department. Are you talking about?
What I'm asking is, you said Pride doesn't have the capacity to manage it?
To ask them to have staff or volunteers to try to manage that, to prevent people, that's kind of a liability because it deals with alcohol. So that's really more of a responsibility of our police department.
So through the chair, Pride is one of, if not the only event that is held across the patio boundaries. So if you look at like the art festival, it ends at Planavon. You have DIY, which is contained all within the patio zone. You have Pig and Whiskey, which is all in the patio zone. So Pride is the only one that overlaps the patio zone.
So could you block off the Planavon to Livernois area?
I don't know why you'd want to block that
Well,
off.
if you had to manage the cups, is what I'm asking.
That's,
Like how the other festivals do it.
well, that's because they get a special license just for a particular area, and the state law requires it to be fenced. And you can't bring in a patio zone cup into that area, or you can't take an alcohol that you bought at the special event that is a designated area that's fenced off. You can't take it outside. So it's two different state rules.
So when we say we're suspending the patio zone, Are we suspending the entire patio zone? Or just a portion between Planavon and
Very good question,
Livernois?
Councilman. And there is a suggestion that should you just suspend the west side of Woodward and leave the east side open? But then again, how would we physically be able to man that to prevent people from going across Woodward?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm asking because council members, we've certainly heard from businesses who are going to be affected by this. And obviously, they're not happy.
Right.
And I guess what I'm trying to find is some kind of something that allows some of our businesses to capitalize on a beautiful day, hopefully, and have folks take advantage of their patio zone and do revenue. Because right now, this is the worst possible time to be asking businesses in the food and service industry to be doing anything that would potentially impinge on their revenues. I mean, they're all barely hanging in there right now. So I guess my concern is, you know, yes, will one day of no patio zone or 2 days, will that be the make or break? Maybe not. But we're asking a lot of businesses in the middle of peak outdoor activity season to give up one of the prime draws of downtown Ferndale, which is patio zones, outdoor drinking. Everyone loves that. And so, you know, it's a lot to ask right now at this time.
Respectfully, through the chair, but it is just one day. And why does the event attendees have to be forced to be in an environment that they may not necessarily want to be around? Because there are a lot of people that do come to Pride and they enjoy the fact that it's not like the one downtown where all there is drinking all over the place. They like the fact that it is more family friendly.
I guess, again, through the chair and also respectfully, I guess I fail to see how that would be a genuine problem. I fail to see how that is a meaningful concern in this circumstance. I don't think that there's a risk of people wandering around with kegs on their backs or bottles of booze that they've taken out of place. I don't see that being a genuine risk. And I think, you know, if the situation is, I think these concerns are coming up now, and I get that this is not something that Julia and the Pride team or that you have clearly anticipated needing to discuss, but we have to talk about it. Like, we have to talk about the fact that that Pride has gotten very big, and it's taking up all of downtown at a peak time. And then we're also saying that certain other aspects of downtown life have to stop on a day when there are thousands of people downtown. I mean, that's difficult. It's difficult to ask, and we have to see it from everybody's perspective.
Well, you're not asking businesses to close their doors.
I understand that. We understand that. And I believe we're all cognizant of that. Nevertheless, these are concerns that have been expressed, and thus we will weigh them along with all the other concerns, because that is what a council does. And so what I would like is a plan for next year for Pride to figure out what the solution is to meet the needs of everybody. Period. I mean, is the answer that Pride just needs to get a temporary liquor license that it won't use? It's not going to have alcohol. Okay, big deal. And that allows it to overlap? Is that the deal? Like, I don't know.
So I guess.
As one of the founders of Ferndale Pride.
And you're on the board, right?
Yeah, I'm on the board.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of the founders with Julia and two other people. One of the things that we decided early on was that the event would never have alcohol. Never. We didn't want to have a liquor booth. We didn't want any of that activity in the event. And the only way that we supported what is actually happening today is Western Market is closing off their parking lot and creating a beer wine garden. And that's their right. It is not part of the footprint. It is off the side. They are very generous in that they give us the profits to those. But that was one of the things that we wanted as part of this event. And I understand with COVID, these patio zones were created. And when they were originally created, we had specifically requested that the patio zones be suspended on the day of Pride. And every year since then, it hasn't been a problem. And now there's this conversation of, well, we want to change that so that, you know, all the other events now have the ability to do the patio zones during their events and all of that. And we've had a waiver, and now all of a sudden, the businesses that are pushing liquor are all about, we have to have this one day as well. Have to have this one day as well. I'm sorry, I just don't understand why one day out of 365 matters so much. Why can't there be one day where people can come to the downtown and not feel like they have liquor all around them?
Through the chair, I completely empathize with you. The feedback that I've heard from the business owners is that it's not so much that they are just demanding that liquor has to be out there in the public. It's that the burden of enforcement has been shifted onto them. And so they're now having to stop people, they're now having to explain to people that they can't leave the business, for instance, the Rust Belt market.
Hire extra folks as well.
Right. So it becomes one of those things that they're asking us, why do we shift the burden from an event onto them? And I struggle with the explanation. I'm not saying that we shouldn't waive it by any stretch of the imagination. What I'm saying is, how do we talk to those business owners and empathize with them too?
Through the chair. So it's actually quite simple. They aren't allowed to give people alcohol in an unapproved cup. It has to be an approved cup for them to take it out. So if they're, first of all, not pouring liquor in those cups, and secondly, as they're giving people their drinks, sorry, today you can't take these out. You can only consume it inside. That's not that difficult. I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to, like you say, they're trying to make more money on that day so that they can encourage more people to buy in, take out, so that allows more people to come in. Soho is a great example. They are packed. And I know that, you know, if it would be of a financial benefit to them, but they also understand, they're wonderful partners. They also understand what we're trying to accomplish. And they are not out here going, we need to have more alcohol out on the streets. We need to be able to push the patio zones. They're not. They're supportive of us right now. So I'm sorry if the Rust Belt is having a problem, but a lot of the other businesses actually support what we're doing.
Through the chair, I've talked to a lot of other businesses who have taken issue to it, and I'd like to point out that one of the owners of Soho is also on the board for Pride. So, you know, there's some bias there as well. And also, another concern is our police and fire. You know, it puts an extra burden on them to manage it.
I'm sorry, I think that's a misunderstanding. It's a burden if they have to manage it.
No, it's a burden when they don't, and it's confusing. If all things were equal, like all the time, I did speak with both chiefs regarding it. So it's more confusing when it is shut down because they have to manage it, and they have to tell people, no, you can't bring that drink out. No, you can't come out. Go in and out. So it's more of a burden because it's confusing and people don't understand it. So it's about supporting our businesses, supporting our police, supporting our fire, as well as Pride.
Yeah, that's what we were told. We were told that it's,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I can tell you, I did call our chief today, and I also spoke with our fire chief as well. Would you like to
I would
speak on
like
it?
to, I would like to make a point that, so with this, and I'm just trying to think back here, I recall, I guess when I was first introduced to Pride was in 2012, when I was kind of volunteering, and I don't recall there ever being alcohol available at that time among the streets. And it was a much smaller event then. It's grown significantly now. So with that being said, and with our businesses having been opened all of that time, the businesses that are here during Pride at that time, it was my understanding that the liquor was consumed still on their premises and that it just wasn't brought out into the festival. So I guess what I'm asking is that this is something that our businesses have been, excuse me, not our businesses, but that our police have been kind of overseeing pretty much since that time, because they're out continuously throughout the event. So I guess what I'd like to know is, how has it been since the patio zones have been enforced? How has it been for police and fire to manage that? I already know how the businesses, how they feel about it, but how has it been for police and fire to even take on that? I mean, we have to look at it both ways. Has it been difficult for you as well? That's what I need to know.
Well, in regards to the Pride Festival itself, managing alcohol is always difficult at every special event. Even keeping normal bottled or, glasses within a bar can be difficult at such a large event with so many people. Even keeping drinks within the beer garden, sometimes they get out, we have to address it. In putting more drinks into that large of a footprint with the social, patio district cups, that could be difficult to keep within the footprint if that was allowed. So both options present difficulties for us. It is a unique event because the other events are typically, have an LCC permit to sell alcohol within that footprint. And that's the only alcohol that gets sold that comes in and out of it. But that is a specific event that has its own challenges because of the bars that are connected to the footprint and the size of it, as well as the beer garden being adjacent to it. So it is unique. But both sides present problems for us.
Well, I just have this to say, and I, entertain any comments based on that. Pride is already scheduled to happen. And what they're asking for is to be able to have the event as they've had it in the past without the alcohol. And I understand that the businesses are having concerns about that, but I think it was Councilmember Paul Johnson's point to something that we need to, and didn't you mention to reevaluate this at the time, because right now the event is scheduled to happen. I just feel like it's scheduled to happen right now, and that this is how Pride has always operated. So I'm interested to see, before we go into a vote, what council's view is regarding some sort of review for this next year before Pride even starts to plan, which is probably the day after Pride ends, right? So I think that I'm interested to hear, before we go into a vote, what we all think about that.
Through the chair. I completely agree with Councilmember Johnson in reviewing this after Pride.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think the vote should reflect that we want to look at this after Pride, and hopefully at this year's event, the police and fire department can take a little bit more detailed notes about what they found working in this manner. I believe the other events coming up in the year, and I'm looking at Mr. Larry, Pig and Whiskey, DIY, are they going to be changed now? Because now their footprint, I believe that you're allowing the patio zones to be open during their events.
Well, they are anyway. They just can't bring in a patio zone cup inside a fenced area that has a liquor license for the event. Whereas, for example, Cinco de Mayo, they won't be fenced this year. They're going to actually take advantage of the patio zone and sell. They're going to focus on patio zone cups to sell drinks at their event because they're within the social district area.
Okay, okay.
And they're not going to be in any parking lots. They're only going to be on the street.
Okay. And there's probably some other events that are going to operate very similar. So I think there's an opportunity for our police and fire to determine how those events handle the use of patio zones during events. And then later, after the festival season, we have a conversation and see what the end results are. And then during that time, Julia can determine what other options Pride could function with if alcohol is going to be allowed. But there needs to be a lot more time than just 2 months, you know.
Or we look at different locations for Pride. There are many options we can look at. I mean, if this is something that this body will have to discuss. So, you know, I take seriously the desire not to have alcohol and other things at Pride. I understand and respect that, and I like that, but I'm also not missing the irony of the fact that marijuana and alcohol companies are some of the bigger sponsors of Pride and have some of the most lavish tents at Pride. They may not give alcohol, but they're certainly doing a lot to give people access to that and advertise it. So while I appreciate that we don't serve it, we certainly don't turn away sponsors of companies that are also problematic in that space. And I just want to be very clear on the record about that. So while I respect the boundary of not having the substance, it has not stopped us from blurring that boundary quite a bit for the event to be the size that it is, because we couldn't be this size if we weren't taking such large naming right sponsorships and large sponsors from these companies. So,
and $7,500 from Corewell Health.
I feel like we're setting a precedence here that we don't want to set. So I would be open to considering this is a hot topic, and although before we go into a vote, I would be open to, if it's not, you know, if no one objects, to, if you wanted to speak, Julia, you come up to the podium and say something so that everyone could hear it.
I think it's really important for folks to understand that we're talking about 2/3 of the event. So that means no one could have alcohol from Planavon. That means the entire stage, all the way through the food court. That's the vast majority of the vendors and the vast majority of the sponsors who people couldn't carry alcohol to. In addition to that, anyone who's coming off of one bus would have to go through the alcohol zone. Anyone coming off of another bus would have to go through the non-alcohol zone. So it's a very big mixing in our event. We're also talking about events that are completely different. So like many of the events here are based on alcohol sales. This is not. This is based on raising money to have money left over for charities in our community. That's why there is such a large difference. We also, as we expanded, we had this event, the patio zone came out later, but we already had a no alcohol event, and then we got so big we're outside the zone. Even if we look at crossing Woodward, which the police said would be more dangerous, we're still dealing with the event being larger than that zone. 30,000 people are going to show up here no matter if I'm ready or not for the event. Like, that's the problem, right? We're out of space for vendors. We're out of space for stages. So, like, it's going to have to be everyone getting creative, not just Julia getting creative to come up with a patio zone. I'm not really thrilled that there are a few restaurant owners who are straight members of our community who are unhappy with this, because I can tell you that the restaurants who don't serve alcohol are coming in with bigger donations than the ones that do this year in many cases. And so, like, Space Cat Bistro, or like their name's slipping my head, but the Doner Kebab place, like, those places don't sell alcohol and they can still do $1,000. We've also offered to help create signage, either working with the DDA or just us on our own and giving it to the business owners to put up on the doors, because signage does go a long way in clarifying things to people. People do follow signs by and large. And then we also have that, like, single warning already. Hey, there was a sign on the door that said no alcohol beyond this point. Very simple. You know, we would even pay to provide it. But that has not been brought up as a compromise. So, like, we've brought up compromise ideas, but, like, we're just trying to keep folks safe and keep the party contained, and 30,000 people is a lot to deal with. Alcohol does come in all sorts of ways. We have people carrying plastic water bottles that when they spill on the ground, we know it's alcohol. So we deal with a lot of alcohol for not dealing with alcohol. I can tell you that. But if there's any other questions, I can definitely answer them, because this is my area of expertise for sure.
Through the chair, I have a question. So you said that that Pride has offered to buy signage, and that was not compromise that was explored. Who would be the party exploring that?
Well, we didn't really have a time to talk about it because it was just brought up in the last meeting. But I'm happy to do it still. I mean, it's not a big deal. Just make signs and send them.
I would say, again, through the chair, that's one of those things that I think we should explore. We have our DDA director here. It would be fabulous if the DDA could help coordinate some of this with the business owners and look for solutions so that it's not all on you. And then council can obviously discuss at length.
Mm-hmm. And I would be interested, through the chair, I would be interested in having a conversation with the DDA and the DDA board about further support and what the DDA could do to better support. You know, Pride is, I get it. I'm going to get beat up. I'm going to get messages from people after this meeting tonight. They're going to say I'm anti-Pride and I'm not being good at this, but, you know, whatever.
Not any more than I will.
Get in line between the residents who hate me for taxes. So, I'm interested in having a conversation about what we can do to support Pride that balances everything, right? Like, my job is to balance everybody's needs, and I want to figure out if there are ways that we can better support, and if there's a path forward with the DDA to better support Pride, and I do mean financially, not just staff or people helping, I do mean talking about the prioritization of what we're doing with our DDA dollars. These are just tax dollars from residents and in the DDA capture, so we can talk about what our priorities are for those dollars, and that's something I would like to do very seriously over the next year. I'm going to vote to approve this. Like, I'm not going to not approve this. We're not going to do that to you on this kind of short notice.
I hope not, because there's only so much my little heart can handle.
But it does say that we have to have a more robust conversation about what the impact of Pride is on downtown. It's a very important event, but it's also just it's a big event. I mean, it's a lot for folks to deal with. You deal with it, obviously, we know that, but there's a burden on a lot of folks to carry it off. And we want to talk about what that means and how we're best supporting Pride and how Pride is best supporting the community, because it does an amazing job, but
my feedback that I've always gotten from restaurants is that it's their number one day of the year. So that's why I guess the confusion comes in, is like, I understand if it's the number one day, how much more do you have to turn up those sales? especially when there are restaurants running out of product. Like, how much more can you go? If you can't stay open until 2 in the morning, do you really have to pump through all that product by 10 p.m. and close? So, like, there has to be some type of balance, and I would like the majority of that to come from folks who have supported Pride, and so far only one of those voices has spoke up about alcohol to me.
Through the chair, I don't know that it's necessarily a financial, it's a burden of controlling the people coming in and out, hiring extra staff, and that the burden is put on the businesses. And that's what we're here to do, is just try to find a compromise.
They've always explained it as being like hiring the extra staff being the financial burden of the thing for them. So that's what I had heard.
Oh,
But, like,
yeah, a financial burden.
Right, but I'm hoping, like, the amount of alcohol sales, when you're talking about paying someone $15 to $20 an hour, should more than cover that. I mean, from hearing the sales numbers from the bars that they talk about, and knowing what the bartenders are tipped out at the end of the night, like, they're making a good deal of money to be able to cover a few extra add-ons.
Well, at Soho, yes.
Yeah. But at a lot of the bars, actually, like, it's the biggest day of the Elks year too, you know, and they're not even on the site. Syndicate did great last year. They're not on site.
And I do want to be clear, I don't think that the burden of this lays on you and Pride. I think the burden of this also lays on the businesses to have a conversation with us and via the DDA and to have a conversation about, okay, what does it mean to prepare for Pride? You and I have spoken about this, and you brought up a really great point. Businesses are running out of product and their complaint, well, that's not a complaint thing. That's you failed to prepare for a large event that's going to drive a lot of people through your door. So we need to talk about, okay, your businesses, how do you prepare for Pride? From your perspective, how do you be better about operating during Pride and maximizing on that? And that's something that
I do offer that to any business that wants to sit down and talk about, like, ways to streamline menus, ways to have events that will go along with throughout the month. Because even like Elaine B. Jewelry can do really well during a Pride month, even though they're not a restaurant. So there's, like, I have a lot of ideas in my head of how to help businesses, and I offer that.
Right.
By the way, Elaine Jewelries is phenomenal. They're a huge supporter of Pride.
So, Madam Mayor, I am going to move to approve the special event permit for the 15th Annual Ferndale Pride to be held on Saturday, May 31st, 2025, as submitted by the Special Events Director, and to approve the suspension of the Ferndale patio zone for the duration of the event.
Support.
Johnson,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Nikolsky,
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes. Revisit this again, probably the day after soon. So that we can figure out a way to support the businesses and to continue to support Pride that gives so much to a lot of organizations. So. All right. Is that it? That was it? Okay.
That's it.
All right, so now I'd like to turn it over to the city manager regarding department head updates.
Yes, Clerk's Department.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just to remind you all, we do have a May 6th election, has been mentioned a few times tonight. I do want to say we have about 4,300 ballots that are still out, so folks who want to get those back to us, we'd greatly appreciate it, but you do have until 8 p.m. on May 6th, the election night, to get those back to us. We have early voting that will begin on Saturday, April 26th, and that will go until May 4th at the Hazel Park Community Center on Woodward Heights. The hours of that is 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. The only exception to that is Thursday, May 1st, which will occur 12 to 8. So that's everything. Thank you.
Communications.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So we are on the third week of the Fern and Learn program. We've had a great 2 weeks so far. We have about 15 students signed up. 3 of them are actually returning students, so they've already Fern and learned and they want to Fern and learn some more. So the city manager's office conducted an overview of the city's structure, finances, the Headley override, and then the fire department gave a lot of valuable information about their services, fire safety, and they led a station tour. So thank you to Colleen, James, Teresa, and John for the help on that so far. So this week is the police department session on Thursday, April 17th from 6:30 to 8 here in City Council chambers. There will be a presentation led by the police department and then a station tour as well. And then next week, the finance department will host a comprehensive overview of their department, along with a detailed discussion about the Headley proposal. And that will be next Thursday, April 24th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at Incubizo. So it's not too late to sign up. We still have 8 more sessions to go. So you can learn more at bit.ly/FernandLearn2025. That's bit.ly/FernandLearn2025. Or you can email me at rcoleman@ferndalemi.gov. Thank you.
Parks?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a few updates from the Parks Department. This past weekend on Saturday, we were blessed with clear skies and fair temperature as we conducted our citywide Easter egg hunt through our extravaganza program. We had a very good turnout at all of the parks. We did it at Wilson Park, Geary Park, and Martin Road Park, with Wilson Park being an area for 1 through 4 year olds. I would say we had somewhere in the neighborhood of at least 5 dozen kids at each of the parks. We want to thank the Elks Lodge in particular for their assistance with Geary Park. They gave us all the volunteers and did the eggs as part of that particular branch of the hunt. And we had a long line of kids that were taking pictures with the Easter Bunny that we had at Martin Road Park as part of our final hunt of the day. I want to say we gave somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 eggs total across all of the parks to the community, and we're planning on wrapping that up in future iterations of the program. So we want to thank everybody that came out, and we hope everybody had a great time for it. We also want to announce that tomorrow we are planning on opening the registration for the various contests that will be taking place during our Geary Park Skate Jam. So those contests will be across various age groups, as young as 4 years old and as old as whoever wants to get on a pair of skates or a skateboard. The contest will include skateboard competitions, BMX competitions, inline skating competitions, and scooter competitions. For more information, please check on our website. That particular event will be taking place on Saturday, June 7th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. That is all.
Fire?
Good evening. So just a quick reminder, as the weather gets nice and people want to start having like the nice little fire pits in their backyard, just Ferndale does have an ordinance, open burden ordinance. Need to get your permit. It renews annually, $25, and ensure you can do it safely and you don't have us showing up and putting it out. So just as everybody's starting and some people are starting to burn, just remember to get your burn permit.
And Public Works?
Yep, so just real quick, wanted to mention we are in the swing of construction season. You're going to see mist digs out everywhere with flags popping up. Watermain, Brickley, Mahan, and Shevlin is in full swing. Local paving starts this week as well. Park sidewalks are being worked on. DTE is starting on some upgrades. Consumers will be starting soon. Sewer improvements going to begin soon as well. If you have any questions or would like to know who is on your street and you haven't received notice, which you should before the work begins, please call DPW 248-546-2519. We would love to help you out.
That's all.
And I will open it up to council, and I will start to my left. Councilmember Pollock.
Trying to figure out left. The only thing I have is, and I'm really surprised no one from the organization is here tonight. So the Fern Care annual dinner is April 24th. It is their Sweet 16 dinner event. Tickets are $100. It is at the Venetian Club in Madison Heights. Always a wonderful event. There's a silent auction, which if you can't attend the dinner, you can always participate in the auction because it is online. But if you'd like more information, you can go to www.venetian.com ferncare.org and go under the donate tab to the dinner event and buy tickets or donate if you can't afford a dinner ticket. Please help. It's a completely nonprofit organization for people who are either uninsured or underinsured. So that's all I have.
Johnson.
Just doubling down and reiterating what Councilmember Pollica just said. Ferndale dinner. Sign up. Can't make it, give a little money. I've gotten some really cool stuff at the auction, so really beautiful art, really beautiful things, so there's always amazing stuff. Check it out online if you can't make the event. Other than that, like the chief said, good weather is coming. Everyone's going to be out leaf blowing and doing yard cleanup, so just encouraging folks, be patient, be kind with your neighbors as they all everyone starts to emerge from their cocoons and learn what it is to live in a society again. And so, just be kind to each other through all that.
Mayor Pro Tem Makowski.
I have nothing further tonight.
Great. Well, I just want to give out a couple of congratulatory notes. A high school that normally doesn't get a lot of, you don't hear a lot about them, but I just want to give a shout out to University High School's Mr. Mackey, who has spearheaded the rebirthing of the robotics team at the University High School. And with that being said, over spring break, they had their first robotics competition, and with this kind of being brand new for University High School, they finished 3rd overall and earned the Rookie of the Year award, and the next step is that they're going to state competition. So I think that's amazing for their first time out in a very long time. And also, I also have to give a shout out to the Ferndale Winter Guard, 3rd in the state in their division. I think that's amazing. So congratulations to both of them. I would also like to, a reminder, you've heard it, we have an election coming up on May 6th. You heard about how we are recognizing National Public Safety Telecommunications Week, and it's not just that. It's our services that we've come to grow and love and depend on for as long as I've been here, as far as I know, and that's been over 30 years. So I would think that it is really crucial that we're able to maintain those services, and we need your support as a city to come out and vote, either by absentee, by early voting, or on election day in support of our city services. With that being said, and unless anyone has anything else that you might have forgotten about, this meeting is adjourned at 9:14 p.m. Thank you.